What you will see now is a compilation of little-known lore from the work. After all, everything that comes out here belongs to side stories, those stories that usually go unnoticed, even by those who read the novels, but do not go unnoticed by me. I want to clarify that I will indicate in each compilation at what moment each piece of data you will see happens. For this, I will assume that the arcs of ReZero are known. But, if you do not know them, do not worry. I will explain it to you quickly. Arc 1 ranges from when Subaru meets Amelia until she saves him. Arc 2, from when Subaru meets Rem until she falls in love with him. Arc 3 covers the return from the capital until Subaru defeats Pedal Guys. Arc 4 is, in simple terms, the entire second season. Arc 5, the entire third season in Pristella. And finally, Arc 6 would be the fourth season. Remember this for the future. But now, let's start. Welcome to 1 hour of ReZero Facts to Sleep To, part number 3. Did you know there's a novel that tells the story of how Elsa and Mei Li first met? The most interesting part is that this story will likely be featured in the upcoming fourth season. They say the first time Elsa saw her was in a field of corpses. In the middle of slaughtered beasts stood a little girl, filthy and covered only by a scrap of cloth. The strange thing was that the bodies surrounding her were those of beasts, not humans, and the one who had killed them all was a teenage Elsa. Despite the knife she carried, she possessed a certain wicked allure. She told the girl she wasn't going to hurt her, as she'd been ordered to bring her back alive. The little one stared at her with pure hatred. Elsa commented that with that attitude, she looked like a beast princess. The little girl only growled. Right then, the king of the forest appeared. Elsa, far from being scared, licked her lips and remarked how fabulous it was to have such a big friend. The beast attacked, but Elsa dodged and, with a single slash, took off its front leg. As she prepared to finish it off, she whispered that she wanted to see what kind of bowels it had. The fight was completely one-sided. Elsa dodged and severed parts of the beast, which could only moan, begging for death. While rummaging through its guts, the young woman asked the little girl if she could call another one just so she could compare their entrails. The girl didn't answer. She just glared with hate, knowing she had lost her best weapon. Elsa walked toward her and picked her up gently. She told her not to worry, that she was taking her back. The little one struggled and began to bite her neck in a rage, while Elsa simply remarked that being hated that much wasn't very pleasant. But in her current state, the girl's bites only tickled. Years later, the little one, now known as Mei Li, pressed her lips against Elsa's neck. Elsa asked what she was doing. Mei Li said she was remembering the time she tried to kill her by biting her like that. Elsa smiled and said it was like being bitten by a puppy, to which Mei Li reminded her that she had killed all her beasts, so she still wanted to kill Elsa in the worst way possible. Elsa said that she'd made it clear from the start she wasn't going to kill her. Mei Li shot back, asking who would ever believe her after seeing her tear her beasts apart. The assassin simply commented on how much Mei Li had changed, how she now spoke properly instead of just making guttural sounds. The younger girl just said it wasn't fair for Elsa to speak so lightly to someone who was suffering. Elsa looked at her, confused. She insisted that if she hadn't gone looking for her, she would have missed out on knowing her, adding that she felt Mei Li was like her sister now. Mei Li was left speechless by the unusual display of affection and called her a weirdo. Elsa nodded, saying it was precisely because they were both weirdos that they could be together like this. Then, stroking the braid that the girl had made for her, Elsa said she'd gotten much better at it. Mei Li told her that if she kept exposing her neck, she'd end up biting her to death. Elsa remarked that she trusted Mei Li wouldn't really bite anymore, to which Mei Li asked if Elsa still wanted to cut her stomach open. Elsa thought about it and replied that she was still interested in her insides, but not enough to destroy what they had. After a silence, Mei Li moved closer to her on the sofa. From a distance, without the stench of blood, they looked like two sisters chatting in peace. And it's this memory that will complicate things for Subaru in the fourth season. But that's a story you don't know yet. You surely remember the days when Rem was suspicious of Subaru. Unfortunately, the anime didn't show all the times she had him under surveillance, so this video is here to cover that. On one of those days when Subaru was acting like the most positive guy in the world, it's said that he finished his chores early and started practicing latte art, a technique that lets you draw with milk in a cup. Rem, who was watching him closely, I entered the dining room expecting to find the usual post-lunch chaos, but she stumbled upon an unexpected scene. The young man had already concluded his tasks and was resting with a smug look that immediately triggered the maid's suspicion. Moreover, Subaru's childish behavior made it hard for her to believe he was actually the same age as her. Seeing that Subaru was happy about finishing his work so quickly, Rem questioned the boy's pride in such basic tasks as stacking plates. Facing this lack of recognition, Subaru defended his potential, but he was quickly ignored when Rem's gaze fell on a cup containing coffee from Wallachia. With enthusiasm, Subaru revealed his creation, a detailed drawing of Puck rendered with milk foam on top of the drink. The maid couldn't help but be amazed, watching this unknown technique with genuine curiosity. Subaru took the opportunity to prepare a personalized cup for her, and explaining how he had managed to heat and froth the milk using magic crystals from the bathroom. With precise movements, he formed a perfect heart on the surface, a skill he called late art. Although Rem was marveled by the dexterity required for something she considered unproductive, she concluded that Subaru must come from a wealthy family. She deduced that only someone who had never worked hard would dedicate time to perfecting such useless talents as magic tricks or drawing in coffee. Despite her initial resistance, Rem accepted Subaru's invitation to try creating her own design. However, what seemed simple in the young man's hands turned out to be a frustrating task. The maid's attempt ended in a shapeless white blob. Embarrassment and frustration overcame her, leading her to coldly kick Subaru out of the dining room to hide her failure. An hour later, Ram found her sister surrounded by dozens of cups, clear evidence of her obsession with mastering the technique. Softly, Ram reassured her sister by quoting Roswell's wisdom on the importance of putting effort into seemingly useless activities to relax the spirit. Then, Ram proceeded to try her hand at latte art. She took a cup and in a single attempt, perfectly drew words from Subaru's native language, which she had learned through the Japanese lessons Subaru gave her during their nightly study sessions. Something I've also covered on this channel if you want to check it out. While Ram mentioned feeling proud to crush the things Barusu was an expert in, Rem once again felt the talent gap that separated them. Nevertheless, after tasting the bitter coffee Subaru had prepared, she regained her determination. She decided that the next day she would take it upon herself to teach the boy the correct way to grind beans. And in the process, she would continue spying on him to make sure he wasn't a spy. But we know how that ended. It's a story you already know. Did you know that Ram actually knows the Japanese alphabet? For reasons no one can quite explain, the maid has demonstrated knowledge of Subaru's world, a detail revealed in an obscure side novel. During the period when Rem was still deeply suspicious of him, Ram was tasked with teaching Subaru the local language. While the anime briefly touched on these study sessions, it skipped over several of them entirely. In these missing scenes, Subaru opened up about his life back home, mentioning that he attended school until it was no longer mandatory, at which point he stopped going and eventually ended up in Lugunica. Ram sensed a deep-seated sadness in him when he spoke of his past, so she chose not to pry. Instead, she offered a rare moment of connection, sharing that she and her sister had also attended a form of kindergarten in their youth. The nighttime lessons, however, were anything but gentle. Every mistake Subaru made was met with a sharp strike from a wand across his hand. Nursing his reddened skin, Subaru complained about these Spartan methods and pleaded for a more compassionate approach, given the difficulty of mastering a foreign language while laboring as a servant. Ram remained unmoved, simply accusing him of not putting in enough effort. Driven to prove her wrong, Subaru proposed a challenge involving his own native tongue. He produced a sheet featuring the Japanese alphabet and laid out the terms of a bet. If she could learn and read those sounds in a single night, he would accept all her criticisms and work tirelessly without rest. However, if she failed, both she and her sister Rem would have to treat him with significantly more kindness in the future. Ram accepted the challenge with total confidence. As the study session continued, they kept talking about various topics. He described what life was like in his home country and admitted he had no memories of his time in kindergarten. Ram, for her part, shared that she had moved with Rem to work for Rosewall at the age of 8, exactly 9 years ago. It was at that moment that Subaru realized Ram is actually older than him, even though for some reason he had assumed she was younger. Ram didn't miss the chance to mock him, calling him a weirdo for habitually calling her big sister, even when he mistakenly believed she was the younger one. When the time for the exam finally arrived, Subaru presented his question with the confidence of a villain, certain she would fail to answer in hiragana. However, Ram fluently wrote out the correct response. Defeated by the maid's raw talent, Subaru could only sputter accusations of cheating as she left the room, satisfied and reminding him that his workload would double the next day. Once alone in the hallway, Ram glanced at the symbols one last time. She knew that Subaru would ask her something related to the residents of the mansion, so she had focused her study exclusively on those names. Yet she couldn't shake a strange sensation, the feeling that she had encountered this specific writing somewhere in her distant past. This mystery remains one of the many unsolved threads in the series, a reference that neither you nor I truly know the origin of. Did you know that Elsa is so talented at sewing that she occasionally gives custom handmade plushies to Mei Li? This might be hard to believe since Elsa is such a ruthless assassin, but one of the novels describes how she actually had this hobby whenever she wasn't out on a mission. After Mei Li failed her task of bringing chaos to the mansion of a certain strange noble, Elsa picked her up and escorted her away from Arlem village through the mountains. It's said that Elsa Granhier's laughter echoed through the trees with a joy that stood in sharp contrast to her young companion's indignation. Mei Li Portrout, exhausted and with her cheeks puffed out in anger, scolded her. She found it incomprehensible that the Bowl Hunter could be in such a good mood while they were literally fleeing for their lives in the middle of the dark. Elsa, brushing it off, mocked the girl's over-reliance on her pets and pointed out that a little exercise would do her some good, even admitting she enjoyed that the roles were reversed, since last time it was Mei Li who came to her rescue. Now it was Elsa's turn to help Mei Li. However, the strain of mountain trekking in the wrong shoes finally wore out the little Mei Beast tamer, who collapsed onto a log demanding a break. While catching her breath, some Mei Li expressed her frustration over how her woolgarms had been incinerated by an eccentric mage who rained fire from the sky. Elsa then commented on how interesting that man must be to pull off such a feat, and when asked if she felt any attraction toward the sorcerer, she coldly clarified that her only interest lay in people's beautiful insides. But speaking of strong people, Elsa remembered something and proceeded to give Mei Li a small hand-knitted plushie representing the Sword Saint. Mei Li, though she accepted the gift with affection, couldn't help but mock her companion's strange fixation on recreating, in such detail, the man who had almost ended her life. Later, noticing that the little girl's feet were hurting, Elsa offered to carry her on her back to pick up the pace. Despite Mei Li's initial complaints about the rough movement, the physical pain forced her to accept the gesture, and she soon found herself swept up in a frantic sprint through the forest. Unfortunately, their escape was interrupted when a surviving Volgarm from Mei Li's pack emerged from the bushes with a hostile attitude. While Elsa was ready to execute the beast, Mei Li stepped in, using her power to instinctively subdue it. With an unusual sense of responsibility, the girl warned the monster to hide in the mountains and rebuild its pack far away from that flying mage. She then admitted to Elsa that it pained her to send the creatures to a certain death because of a mistake she had made herself. After ensuring the pack's escape, Mei Li ordered Elsa to keep moving, promising herself internally that the next time she helped Elsa, she would ask for a Volgarm plushie as payment. However, that next time would never come, as Elsa would die in the very next mission, and Mei Li would carry that regret with her in another novel. But that's a story you don't know yet. Did you know that Amelia once dreamed about the story of Alice in Wonderland? The truly shocking part isn't the dream itself, but its implications. I mean, why on earth would a citizen of an isekai world dream about a classic tale from our specific era and time? This is revealed once again in another obscure side novel. The story begins on a day when Subaru was busy narrating the classic tales of Hans Christian Andersen to Amelia. These stories completely captivated her, and as soon as Subaru left to continue his chores, she was overcome by exhaustion from her late-night studies and drifted off to sleep. When she woke up, she saw a version of Puck the size of a small child, walking upright on his hind legs. He was urgently checking an invisible watch on his wrist while expressing his great fear of being late for a vital commitment. It's said that Amelia tried to speak with him, but he simply replied that he couldn't talk to her right now because it would interfere with the pacing of the story. From there, the events of Alice in Wonderland proceeded as usual. Amelia fell into an abyss and arrived at a tiny house where she found a potion prepared by Anna Rose to shrink her size. But she also found a cake made by Clin that reversed the effects. While searching for Puck, she encountered a yellow-haired spirit who was smoking. Amelia told her she shouldn't do that, as Subaru often says that smoking stunts your growth. Bayako argued that smoking wasn't a privilege for children, but for adults like her. To which Amelia countered that it was actually childish for a child to pretend to be an adult, which naturally made Betty furious. Then Subaru arrived, or someone who looked like him, possessing a different name and appearance. Betty and Chesibaru got along terribly, though they understood each other deep down. Once Betty left, Chesibaru invited Amelia to a tea party. Upon entering another room, Amelia saw two more Subarus, who told Chesibaru that it was the first time he had ever brought someone to the party. They added that it made sense he hadn't brought anyone before, considering how boring he was. Feeling overwhelmed, Amelia decided to flee the building, sensing she couldn't possibly handle 3 Subarus at once. Later, she arrived at a castle where Betty was being judged for eating a cake. Amelia remembered that the cake she had eaten earlier was Clin's, so she intervened to state that it was her, not the little girl, who had consumed it. In response, Queen Ram ordered Amelia's decapitation while Rem tried to change her mind. Instantly, the 3 Subarus arrived to plead for Amelia's innocence, and while all this was happening, dozens of Pucks dressed as soldiers descended to capture and imprison her. The dream finally ended when Amelia heard a voice calling her. It was Subaru, waking her up for dinner. Remembering Chesibaru's loneliness, Amelia told him that if he ever hosted a tea party one day, she would make sure to be there. It's curious that this novel places so much emphasis on the term tea party, because just a few episodes later, a certain witch would appear to organize tea parties where very important matters would be discussed. But that is a story you already know. Did you know that Elsa's death had emotional consequences for Mei Li? Unfortunately, the anime couldn't show it entirely, and although it made an attempt, it failed to capture every detail. Shortly after the mansion burned down, and while Subaru was dealing with the Great Rabbit alongside Emilia and Bayako, Mei Li was searching for something among the charred remains of the estate. She was looking for something she knew wasn't there. A fact pointed out to her by Garfield, who stood with his back turned while keeping watch over her. Despite his threats to finish her off if she tried anything, the girl knew it was just a bluff and that the boy wasn't actually going to hurt her. Then, he asked her if this search was actually helping her in any way. Moved by his rough empathy, Mei Li closed her eyes and gave a melancholic smile. She knew she wouldn't find any trace of the person she was looking for. Suddenly, she remembered how she had once asked Elsa if she was immortal. Mei Li had assumed so after seeing her regenerate from all kinds of wounds. But Elsa simply explained that after being sold as a child slave in Gustako, her buyer had used a cursed art on her, turning her into a cursed doll. A curse that prevented the subject from dying until they had killed their target. So it wasn't that she was immortal, but rather, in her own words, she was someone incapable of dying. Puzzled by the way Elsa gave her answer, Mei Li asked her if she wished she could just die already. The older woman, tilting her head in genuine confusion, assured her she had no desire to die. She enjoyed the smell of blood and torn flesh far too much. That curse allowed her to feel alive over and over again. Then, stroking Mei Li's head with blood-stained hands, Elsa tenderly teased her, saying she looked so sad and lonely, worrying about her death. Angered by the blood matting her hair, Mei Li scolded her for being so careless with her appearance and dragged her by the hand to flee the area, warning her that she needed to focus more or she would end up dying first, leaving Elsa alone with her immortal body. Elsa only gave a mysterious smile on that occasion. Back in the present, standing before the smoking ruins of the mansion, Mei Li held back the pain. Elsa had survived stabbings and broken necks, but she had finally been reduced to ash. Only then did Mei Li realize that Elsa had lied to her that day and actually wanted to die. After all, for someone who only felt alive when killing others, it meant she found her own life worthless. At the very least, dying there, fighting until her last breath, must have been a blessing. Having finished remembering Elsa, Mei Li thanked Garfield and told him she was satisfied now. The boy looked at her with irritation and told her bluntly that if she wanted to cry, he wasn't going to stop her. Mei Li didn't understand why he said it, but feeling the sting in her eyes, she looked up at the sky to hide her face and let her repressed emotions finally overflow. Garfield remained silent, allowing the girl to cry. It's said they never spoke of what happened that night again, though this wouldn't be the last time Mei Li thought about all this, as later on, in a novel featuring Reinhard and Vulcanica, she would have to think about her old companion once more. But that's a story you don't know yet. Did you know that Rem and Subaru once slept together? This is recounted once again in another obscure side novel. Or, well, not that obscure actually, since it was one of the few that received a manga adaptation. But as always happens, the manga couldn't cover all the references and details the novel contains. References that, if you've seen my other shorts, you'll understand instantly. The novel begins with Rem waking up and getting ready for the day. She mentions that, until recently, she always tried to dress up to look perfect, but now just looking cute is enough for her. Then she adds that she doesn't like how her breasts keep getting bigger and bigger. After finishing getting ready, she goes to briefly watch Subaru while he sleeps, as is her custom both when waking up and going to bed. Then she proceeds to wake up a sleepy Ram, telling her she should get up soon to set a good example for Subaru. But she adds that if she doesn't have the energy, she should take a day off so that she and Subaru can work together all day. Instantly, Ram wakes up. During their usual banter, Rem asks with a bit of trepidation if she would look good with long hair. Ram deduces she's comparing herself to Emilia while cursing Subaru for causing this change in her younger sister. Later, while Emilia and Subaru are talking in the garden, Rem watches them through the window. At that moment, she hears Betty greeting her and complaining about the boy. The spirit adds that everyone has been influenced by that tick. Then she asks Rem to make sure she doesn't overwork herself or they'll have to give her a day off again. Referencing the events that happened recently in another novel which I also covered, in case you want to see it, Rem catches the hidden meaning in Betty's words and replies that she will work harder as a form of thanks. the girl clarifies that she misunderstood and that she should work less, blaming the insect once again for the confusion. Rem adds that she's happy with her words and will write them down in her Rem and Subaru logbook, which already has 6 volumes written by her. A surprised Betty asks how she has so many volumes when it's only been a month since he arrived. Rem apologizes, thinking Betty meant it seemed like a small amount, and Betty doesn't even bother correcting her. Later, Rem serves tea to Amelia, and the elf asks her to join her. Rem hesitates to accept, as Frederica had taught her that a maid should never do that with her superior. However, as soon as Amelia mentions that Subaru and Ram usually have tea with her, Rem accepts, thinking she'll apologize to Frederica when she sees her again, though we know that won't happen. Amelia notes that it's strange to have tea alone with Rem, since usually Ram and Subaru are with her at that time. Rem explains that while things between them have improved since the incident in the mountains, she still feels they can get along even better, which is why she sent both of them to do the day's shopping in Arlam village. Unfortunately, more things happen in this story, like Rem talking about the day Amelia sang, or Puck talking about the night Amelia and Rem got drunk. But the 3-minute format isn't long enough for me to explain it all. When night falls, Rem enters Subaru's room, and after a series of events, a sleepwalking Subaru ends up hugging her and pulling her into his bed, preventing her from leaving. Rem resigns herself and falls asleep. The next day, when Ram goes to wake Subaru up, she finds the scene and nearly makes Subaru return by death. Curiously, in the 4th season, Ram will also sleep with Subaru, but that's a story you don't know yet. Did you know that Subaru once felt jealous when he saw Julius dancing with Amelia? This appeared in a novel set at the beginning of what would be Season 4. The anime will likely skip it, but I won't. By the way, consider this your spoiler warning. Following the fierce battle in the city of Pristella, Natsuki Subaru and his group set out on the arduous journey toward the sand dunes in search of the sage. However, the trip was awkward due to the tense interaction between Anastasia and Julius. Remember that since Julius had been forgotten by everyone, Anastasia had no memory of him. Furthermore, the Anastasia present at that time wasn't the usual Anna, but the artificial spirit known as Echidna. Only Subaru and Beatrice knew the truth, which is why Subaru was the only one capable of detecting the tension between Julius and the candidate. He feared that Anastasia's true identity would be exposed, complicating the group's dynamics. Feeling stifled by Julius's overwhelming devotion, Anastasia signaled Subaru for help. Sensing the urgency, Subaru orchestrated a distraction by sending Amelia to tend to the confused knight. He told Amelia that Julius's face looked tense, so he asked her to wipe that stiff expression off his face. This way, he managed to get some alone time with the spirit. Echidna confessed that she found Julius's devotion unbearable. Lacking precise memories of the original relationship between the merchant and her knight, she feared any slip-up would give away her true identity. She begged Subaru to intervene and help establish some much-needed distance. Though frustrated by having to cover for someone who shares the name of the witch he loathes, the young man agreed. However, when he went looking for Amelia, he found her holding Julius's hands as if they were about to dance. It turns out Amelia took the order to remove his stiff expression, quite literally, and was about to stroke his face to soothe him, when in reality, she was only supposed to talk to him and listen to his troubles. After a small jealous fit and once alone with the forgotten knight, Subaru tactfully suggested that his excessive closeness to Anastasia felt unnatural. Julius, with palpable sadness, admitted he was aware of his lady's discomfort. He explained that even if the world had forgotten the bonds forged in the past, he still vividly remembered his loyalty and the friendships that defined his life. He questioned whether acting based on memories only he possessed was an act of pure selfishness or a greed that only caused distress. Subaru was on the verge of telling him that if he already knew, he should stop acting that way. But looking at the solitary battle of that man erased from history, he couldn't bring himself to be cruel. Firmly, he assured him that clinging to his feelings was not a sin, and that he shouldn't accept an unfair loss just because the rest of the world couldn't understand it. Moved, Julius thanked him for the gesture and mentioned that he had started recording his experiences in a journal since the events in Pristella, adding that Subaru's name appeared frequently in his notes. Seeing the knight at peace, Subaru decided that, for the time being, he'd let Echidna suffer a bit longer under Julius's devotion. But this touching moment of friendship would be shattered later on, when the knight discovers that Subaru always knew Anastasia's true identity. But that's a story you don't know yet. Which is worse, forgetting everyone or being forgotten by everyone else? This question haunted the now-forgotten Julius Euculius as he walked the halls of a hospital in Pristella. And no, this isn't a spoiler, because the leaks have already confirmed that what I'm about to tell you was skipped in the first episode of Season 4. It takes place half a day after the attack on Pristella ended. Subaru, Julius, and Anastasia were touring the area's medical facilities. Subaru was scanning the wounded to see if he could recognize anyone else who had been forgotten, just like Julius. However, the boy simply couldn't recognize someone unless he had met them beforehand. Subaru began to feel so overwhelmed by the situation that he lamented not having met the people of that place sooner. Julius told him to calm down, that it wasn't his fault, but Subaru replied that if Julius had been in his shoes, he surely would have felt this same regret for not having known more of the city's people before it all happened. The atmosphere grew heavy when Echidna commented on how cruel it was to forget, unconsciously ignoring her lack of tact in front of Julius. The knight, whose existence had also been erased from the minds of his loved ones, assured her with a melancholy smile that there was no reason to apologize. However, deep down, he was deeply pained by the distant and respectful tone with which his lady now treated him, as all the warmth of their original relationship had been lost. Suddenly, some healers rushed past with a stretcher, causing Subaru to stop dead in his tracks. Subaru had just spotted Joshua, Julius's younger brother. He was unconscious, one of the many victims of gluttony. For the night, the world seemed to crumble at that very moment. He leaned over his brother's limp body, feeling a suffocating guilt upon discovering that he felt no real bond toward him. Gluttony had not only snatched away his name from the world, but had also stolen his ability to recognize his own kin. That irony, being a brother who looks at his brother like a stranger, turned out to be the most devastating blow of that day. In the midst of that silent despair, the presence of Ricardo, the imposing beastman, brought a touch of humanity to the scene. Sitting beside the knight, Ricardo mentioned with a comforting naturalness that both shared the same scent in their blood, validating their kinship despite the absence of memories. With a heavy, fatherly hand, he ruffled Julius's hair and forbade him from carrying the weight of others' wounds, like the arm Ricardo lost while protecting him in battle. He then entrusted him with Anastasia's protection on the imminent journey toward the Pleiades watchtower, placing a blind trust in him that required no past memories, since technically Ricardo was entrusting his lady to a total stranger. Strengthened by this gesture, Julius thanked him. The novel then mentions that he took out his diary and began to write. After the encounter with gluttony, he has decided to start recording every detail of his daily life so that nothing is ever lost to oblivion again. And this very diary would end up causing a series of misunderstandings, like the time Subaru thought Julius and Amelia were flirting. But that's a story you don't know yet. It's curious how ZzZero has been dropping hints about the implicit connection between Subaru and Beatrice, but I feel like the story is just one tiny, and I mean tiny, step away from blowing it and giving their relationship a completely different meaning. Let me explain why I think this. From the very first moment the guy stepped into the mansion, it was revealed that he has a high magical affinity with Beatrice, to the point that the wounds Betty heals are much more effective on Subaru simply because of their compatibility. As they continued living together, it turned out that the very things Subaru loves, like mayonnaise, Betty loves way too much as well. What's next? Subaru doesn't like green vegetables, and therefore Betty doesn't either. Well, that's actually canon. In fact, the first person to notice the similarity in their palates was Rem, who purposely fed Betty different dishes just to see how Subaru's taste buds would react. All of this is without even mentioning another coincidence, that at a certain point in their lives, both ended up confined to a single room, isolating themselves from the outside world. It's also strange to consider how, when Betty was designed, her creator ended up giving her the appearance of a little girl. This might seem like a coincidence at first glance, but when you remember that Subaru is specifically good at getting along with children, well, it's inevitable to think that maybe Betty was made that way on purpose. Perhaps someone expected Subaru and Betty to hit it off so that in the future, the boy could use her companionship to overcome the obstacles in his path. It's not crazy to think this when we consider that Flugel's tree was mysteriously planted many centuries ago and was eventually used to deal the final blow to the white whale. Could it be that Betty and the tree both fall into the category of things Flugel expected Subaru to use in the future? Who knows? I'd like to think Flugel isn't enough of a bastard to use an innocent girl for 400 years. Or at least I would. Until we remember that Flugel used Shala for 400 years, selfishly isolating her in the tower. So, at this point, even I don't know what to believe. Another piece of evidence that reinforces the idea that Betty was made for Subaru is that, in an alternative story, Echidna reveals that the person Betty was waiting for was a man. But who is this man? The concept of that person is what indirectly planted the seeds of loneliness in Beatrice and, in turn, caused so many problems for Subaru in the second season when he was trying to get Bayako out of the mansion. Until we discover the identity of this mysterious man, I think we can keep reviewing the similarities between Betty and Subaru. The fact that they share tastes, personality traits, and magic makes us wonder what other similarities are out there that we haven't noticed yet. Could it be that they even share the same birthday? We know Subaru's birthday is April 1st, but when the author was asked about Betty's date, he said he couldn't reveal it because it would be a spoiler. How on earth is a birthday a spoiler? It makes no sense, unless the date is the same as another important character, or rather, unless the girl's birthday is the same day as Subaru's. Could it be that in the end, Subaru really was the person Betty was waiting for? If that's true, we'll have to re-examine the words he said to her at the end of the second season to see how much the meaning of his speech changes. But remember, this is just a possibility that hasn't been confirmed yet. There is a romance in ReZero that deeply divides the fandom, and it's not just because of the 5-year age gap. I'm talking about Felt and Reinhard. Beyond any debate, the author has left crystal clear clues that his ultimate goal is to make this couple canon. Let me explain why Tappei Nagatsuki has such blatant favoritism for this ship. To start, in the world of ReZero, there is a legendary love story between two young people from worlds and personalities that are complete opposites, Wilhelm and Theresia. They met in a beautiful field of flowers on the outskirts of the capital, many decades before the series began. And guess where Reinhard and Felt first crossed paths? Exactly in that same spot. Sure, today that area is fully urbanized and there are no flowers left, but the parallel is undeniable. And the most curious part is that this detail isn't mentioned in the novels. It was the author himself who revealed in a Q&A session that the meeting place is exactly the same, making his intention for history to repeat itself very clear. But the author doesn't just make these comments on his Twitter account. He also uses the characters within his work to create more situations like this. When Theresia was alive, her best friend was Carol Remedis. She was a good person who truly valued Theresia and stayed by her side her whole life. Because of how close they were, Carol felt that, as a friend, she couldn't just hand Theresia over to any old idiot. Too bad Theresia ended up falling for the biggest idiot of the time. Don't take it the wrong way. Carol knew Wilhelm was an idiot, but she also knew that deep down, he would love and take care of his beautiful wife for the rest of his life. So, she had no choice but to give in and tell him she was entrusting her friend to him. Years would pass, and Theresia's son would eventually have his own child. Due to external circumstances, Carol had to look after the young boy to the point where she essentially raised him as her own son. Now that she's getting on in years, she's afraid of leaving the poor guy alone. And once again, she feels she needs to find someone to look after Reinhard, just as she once entrusted Theresia to Wilhelm. And this search would come to an end when, one day, a radiant girl with blonde hair and crimson eyes appeared. Someone who wasn't at all impressed by the knight's supernatural qualities. Instantly, Carol knew she could trust this girl with Reinhard. So, one day, she tells the girl she can rest easy knowing she can leave the boy in her care. Felt doesn't understand what she's talking about, but she doesn't care. The grandma makes food far too delicious to get upset over something she doesn't get. There's also the occasion where someone abandons a baby and Reinhard and Felt are forced to raise it temporarily until they find its family. But that's a story you don't know yet. So, do you still think the author doesn't want to pair them up? Remember Isekai Quartet? That simple crossover series featuring various isekai anime? Well, when it came time to promote the movie, the author of ReZero had the brilliant idea of writing a novel that ended up revealing more than it probably should have. The novel begins with Alec Hoshin, who we know from the side stories existed 400 years ago in the world of ReZero, and who, according to Anastasia, is a legend that shaped her entire life. It is said that, from one moment to the next, he's teleported to the world of the Isekai Quartet movie, where he begins to wander for so long that he even loses track of the days gone by. In his first days wandering this new world, he remembers his allies. He remembers a silver-haired girl with a kind heart who unfortunately carried a burden that made fate cruel to her, and who was surely searching for him like crazy at that very moment. He remembers a man who was so strong that, on his own, he could destroy nations, yet lacked much patience. Though he could still be reasoned with if you use the right words. He remembers a man with golden hair and red eyes, someone who, despite being born with a silver spoon in his mouth, was humble and truly pleasant to talk to. He also remembers a woman with white hair and a black dress who, in Hoshin's words, cared deeply for the silver-haired girl. Finally, he remembers the most reliable companion of the group, someone who spoke in strange words, using terms from a language not of this world, and who, for some mysterious reason, always knew what to do in the most desperate moments. In the past, Hoshin had survived dragons and absurd sieges thanks to his eccentric traveling companions, who, if you haven't realized it yet, are the following. The silver-haired girl was Satella. The strong man was Reed Estrella. The man with golden hair was Farsale Lugunica, the first king to form a pact with Volcanica. The woman with white hair and a black dress was Echidna. And finally, the weak but reliable man was Flugel. Apparently, they were all on a journey to save the world, but their trek was interrupted when he woke up in this strange place. weeks continued to pass, and he recalls how, on one occasion, he tried to end his life, only for Satella to find out and, through her tears, prevent his death. Moved by that girl's insistence, he stopped. He refused to die in this barren world, and upon regaining his determination, he remembered that despite being a weak man, he wasn't the one most prone to dying in his old group. In fact, the most prone was Flugel, someone who concocted reckless plans and fearlessly threw himself into dangerous situations, only to come out unscathed. Thinking of Flugel and Satella moved him. He truly missed his old group of friends. Eventually, Hoshin gave up and decided to die in that place, only to be found by Pantagruel, who was singing a song with English words. Words that, according to Hoshin, he had heard Flugel mention at some point. The most curious part is that when Hoshin met Subaru and Emilia, he said he had known them for a long time and that they haven't changed since then. But that is a story that, if you've seen the Isekai Quartet movie, you already know. Did you know there's a story in which Rem and Ram talk about their third sister? This happened once again in a little-known side story. During a quiet break at the Roswell mansion, Subaru decided to import a curious holiday from his home world, April Fool's Day. Enthusiastically, he explained that it was the only day of the year where tricking others through pranks and harmless lies was allowed. While Emilia found it amusing, Beatrice rejected the idea from her corner, claiming she saw no point in falsehoods. Subaru argued that allowing these occasional lies helped people value honesty the rest of the time. However, no one, except for Rem, believed him. But of course, Rem didn't count, because she is so head over heels in love that she'd believe anything he says. For her part, Ram claimed that Subaru only wanted to establish the holiday so he could lie left and right without consequences. Yet she decided to participate anyway. Then, Ram stated with total seriousness that she and Rem were actually part of a trio of sisters. The coldness of her delivery, combined with Rem's heartbroken performance as she remembered her other sister, sent Subaru into a state of genuine panic. The poor guy thought he had made Rem cry with his insensitivity, and before he could hug her to comfort her, Ram stepped in and punched him so she could be the one to do it instead. That was the moment Subaru realized he had been played. Inspired by the scene, Emilia tried to pull off her own lie by saying she was part of a quartet of sisters, but Subaru called her out for her lack of originality. Emilia then made an excuse, saying that it was actually Puck who was part of a quartet of brothers. However, only Beatrice ended up falling for it due to her childish nature. Meanwhile, the cat privately expressed his concern about his daughter's excessive honesty, fearing it might be a weakness in the ruthless arena of the royal selection. Taking advantage of the political context, Ram and Rem described the other candidates with monstrous traits. They mentioned a warrior duchess who bathed in blood and a sun princess who turned everything in her path to fire. When a terrified Subaru asked for a description of the third rival, Emilia claimed with a trembling voice that she was a quintuplet, completely ruining the lie. Realizing he had been the victim of a coordinated strategy, Subaru found himself surrounded by the twins' laughter. Beatrice, fed up with everyone else's nonsense, sought Puck's support, only to find 4 identical versions of the spirit responding to her in unison from the table, the result of a magical illusion. When she tried to show the strange phenomenon to Subaru, the young man could only see a single Puck and praise the girl for joining the game with a rather unconvincing lie. Frustrated and with her face flushed with anger at not being taken seriously, Beatrice screamed her hatred for the holiday while the rest of the mansion burst into laughter. Despite the chaos, Subaru felt satisfied with the shared moment of bonding, though he seriously doubted whether the lesson on the value of truth had actually sunk in. You likely remember that in Season 2, Subaru already found Petra working at the mansion, but have you ever wondered how she was hired in the first place? That's explained in another little-known side story. It's said that one day, Frederica Baumann was utterly bewildered. In the Roswell Mansion's drawing room, she couldn't help but stare in shock at the sole applicant for the maid position, Petra Leite, an adorable 12-year-old girl. Trying to wrap her head around it, Frederica tactfully asked if she understood the gravity of the situation and warned her that this was no place for games. Petra made it clear she was there to work, though she admitted with a blush that she had been there before to play tag at Subaru's invitation. This refers to a side story I've also narrated in case you want to check it out. Frederica nearly fainted imagining the chaos of that day and wondered how the boy could have allowed such a thing. But Petra sweetly asked her not to scold him, as he had asked for permission from Roswell himself. Frederica was doubly surprised. She had heard of Subaru's achievements, and, while he seemed like a clever guy to her, she wasn't aware of this rather peculiar side of him. Still, she proceeded with the evaluation. Since she needed someone to start immediately, Frederica was actually inclined to reject her. She asked what useful skills Petra had, hoping to discourage her. But to her surprise, the girl replied with total confidence, She knew the layout of the mansion thanks to her games. She was excellent at sewing, and since the Volgarm incident, she had learned to cook so fast that her mother had nothing left to teach her. Impressed, Frederica warned her in a stern tone that the mansion was involved in the royal selection. Any mistake she made while joining the staff would tarnish her master's reputation, and her young age would be no excuse. Petra, without hesitation and with her cheeks flushed with affection, replied that the person she cared about was far too special to give up on. And besides, she didn't want to lose the battle for love. Right then, Frederica remembered another girl who had made a similar choice for love, herself. So she smiled nostalgically and decided to hire her, while warning her that the training would be tough and that she should refer to her as her big sister. To formalize the hiring, Frederica visited Petra's home in the village. During their chat, she confessed with relief that she didn't know what she would have done if the girl hadn't shown up, since, surprisingly, no one else had responded to the ad. It was then that Petra's mother revealed the cunning truth. Petra had convinced every other girl and young woman in the village to back down and not apply. Frederica's eyes went wide, stunned by the manipulation, while the mother gave her a mischievous wink, assuring her that her daughter had a very promising future. Feeling a hint of admiration, Frederica silently whispered her wish to see the girl's potential blossom alongside Amelia's candidacy. It is said that, in a very short time, Petra improved so much that she even did a better job than Ram. But that's a story you don't know yet. The days when Petra started working as a maid weren't exactly easy for her, especially when she found out her childhood friends were making fun of her older sister figure, Frederica. The story begins with Frederica recalling how she has taught and trained dozens of maids for Roswell. She probably also trained that blue-haired girl currently sleeping in a room, but she couldn't confirm it, at least not right now. It's because she had trained so many workers that she was absolutely fascinated by her current student, Petra Leti. The girl was simply too excellent. When Petra ran up to her with a bright smile to announce she had already finished all her chores, Frederica couldn't help but let out a sigh of pure adoration, marveling at how efficient the little girl was. To hide her amazement and keep up her strict mentor persona, Frederica praised her skills and gently patted her head, thinking about how much she wished a young Ram had had even half those manners when she first started out. With no more work left pending, Frederica suggested taking a trip to Arlem village to do some shopping, thinking Petra's friends would love to see her showing off her uniform. Petra agreed immediately, hiding her nerves with astonishing maturity. Once there, the atmosphere felt tense because a large part of the villagers were still evacuated at the sanctuary. Let's remember that while all this was happening, Subaru was busy dealing with the events over there. Getting back on track, Petra was wearing a lighter version of the uniform similar to Ram's, chosen with the secret hope that a certain black-haired boy would think she looked cute in it someday. However, the run-in with her friends Lucas, Mild, and Mena turned awkward. The kids begged her to stay and play, bitterly complaining about how lonely they were and how boring working must be. Adopting a protective stance, Petra firmly scolded them, reminding them that Subaru and Lady Amelia were working incredibly hard for everyone's well-being at the sanctuary. Despite her good intentions, the kids shot back with immature teasing that hurt the little maid's pride, which led her to pick a fight with them. On the way back, Frederica noticed Petra walking with her face flushed with anger. She gently blocked her path and reminded her of the importance of valuing childhood bonds. Sharing her own experience of growing up lonely without peers her age, she assured her she didn't want Petra sacrificing her normal life for work. With tears in her eyes, Petra finally confessed the real reason behind her anger. The kids had made fun of Frederica's mouth and sharp fangs, calling her terrifying. Frederica, used to the prejudice against her demi-human heritage, felt a pang of pain and tried to apologize for it. But Petra immediately cut her off, telling her that a kind and gentle person like her had absolutely nothing to apologize for. While she was moved by this, Frederica noticed the kids approaching remorsefully to ask for forgiveness. With a smile, she asked Petra to make up with them so they could all be friends. Petra firmly grabbed Frederica's hand, ready to show off to her friends just how wonderful her new older sister really was. And no, this story doesn't get referenced again in another novel like the other examples I give. It's just a random story, plain and simple. There is a ZzZero story that even I'm amazed got approved by the author, and if you're looking at the screen right now, I'm sure you understand why. The funniest part is that this suggestive story takes place in a failed loop. During the days when Subaru was learning the language while working as a servant, it's said that on one of those nights, Emilia sighed in pure bliss as she let her entire body sink into the hot water, feeling the tension from her studies melt away. At the same time, she looked at her body and wondered if she had gained weight, thinking that Puck probably wouldn't like that. Then Ram walked in, wrapped in a towel. With her usual deadpan tone, the pink-haired maid asked if she was intruding, to which Amelia responded with a warm invitation. Right behind her appeared Rem. whose devotion mixed with a protective hostility, as she commented that she would never tolerate someone like Subaru looking at her older sister with impure intentions. Ram coldly seconded the motion, stating she would gouge the boy's eyes out if that ever happened. She then added that, at the very least, the last thing he'd see would be a beautiful view. Amelia tried to defend her benefactor's good nature, but to no avail. As she slipped into the water, the ever-stoic Ram allowed her face to relax, a change Amelia pointed out by joking about how even she let her guard down in the bath. Although the maid simply replied that even a doll like her could express herself that way, Rem proudly revealed that this relaxed side was her sister's most adorable secret. Amelia concluded that being naked allowed them to break down barriers and speak completely freely, an idea the twins sarcastically dismissed, suggesting that Subaru's influence was clouding her judgment. Amelia pointed out that, in reality, they were the ones changing the most because they spent more time with the boy, but both flatly denied that Subaru was altering their personalities, despite the evidence of their growing closeness. Later, Amelia mentioned that she wished she didn't have to involve Subaru in the royal selection because of how dangerous things could get. Ram, who had already received orders from Roswal to keep an eye on the protagonist, reassured her by saying she would take it upon herself to see if the boy was up to the task, and if not, they would simply fire him. The moment of peace was interrupted by Beatrice, who stormed in furiously, complaining that she was sick and tired of that tick always finding the right door to the library. Amelia offered to let her join the bath, but when the little girl refused, Amelia managed to trick her by saying Puck was bathing too. She instantly pushed her into the water, but Biko, being as stubborn as ever, used magic to fly and avoid falling in. However, she didn't count on Rem and Ram thwarting her escape under the excuse that it was time to wash her hair. Biko complained that the maids had never acted like that toward her before, and that they had surely been influenced by that annoying boy. Amelia just thought that maybe she was right, that perhaps they had all been influenced by him. She thought this right, as it's revealed that, at the exact same time, Subaru sneezes, getting the feeling that someone was talking about him. It's said that for the first time that night, the girls stayed in the bath talking for a long time. It's just a shame that this loop would end with Subaru being murdered in the hallway by Rem, but that's a story you already know. Did you know that Petra and Beatrice spent a night together after returning from Pristella? This should have been referenced or shown briefly in episode 1 of ZzZero Season 4, but it didn't happen. After the battle in the water city of Pristella, Beatrice and the others returned to the mansion for a brief breather before leaving for the watchtower. That night, Petra had invited the little spirit to a sleepover in her room. Even though Betty slept next to Subaru every night, every now and then she would sleep with Petra or Amelia. After setting up a table with tea and sweets, Petra asked her with an unusually serious tone to tell her absolutely everything that had happened in Pristella. Beatrice, sensing that Amelia had sugar-coated the most dangerous details in her letter so as not to cause a panic, decided it was best to tell the harsh truth. She knew from her vast experience that hiding the suffering of loved ones only created a deeper abyss of pain in the long run. Thus, she meticulously recounted every one of Subaru's sacrifices, how much he had overexerted himself to the point of breaking his own limits, and the severity of the injuries Garfield and Otto had suffered. Petra listened, shifting from terror to a silent admiration, before finally frowning and asking what had happened to Beatrice herself during all that chaos. Little Biko was left speechless by the question. She thought Petra was scolding her for not having prevented the pain and hardships her contractor suffered. However, Petra exploded with indignation, but not because of Beatrice's supposed uselessness. The little girl furiously called her out, saying she wasn't mad about what Beatrice was just thinking, but rather about how much Subaru had forced her to exhaust her mana to the point of collapsing, making her face a Sin Archbishop alongside Otto in the process. Petra accused her of having zero self-preservation instincts and of dangerously catching her contractor's suicidal habits. With visible concern, she demanded that she sleep by her side that night to make sure she was safe. Betty just complained, telling her not to think she could give her orders just because she grew a little in the month she didn't see her. But even so, she agreed to share the bed with her, thereby sealing an unspoken promise of mutual care. In the middle of the night, Beatrice woke up feeling thirsty. Upon going down to the kitchen, she ran into Frederica, who was preparing a sweet strawberry tea that Subaru had taught her how to make. While they shared the drink, Frederica confessed that imagining Garfield and Otto's injuries made her understand the hell that Subaru and Amelia must have gone through. With an honest look that reminded her of her old friend Ryuzu, she begged Beatrice to take care of them on the journey to the watchtower. Nevertheless, Frederica's final request was the one that shocked the spirit the most. She begged her to take care of herself as well. Beatrice choked on her tea, blushing at receiving genuine concern for a second time in one night. Frederica let out a little laugh while Beatrice sighed sweetly. realizing how warm and protective the people of that mansion were, valuing her as part of their family. Surely, because of Petra and Frederica's requests, Beatrice tried much harder to help Subaru when he lost his memories. But that's a story you don't know yet. Did you know there is a novel where Beatrice finds out that, aside from Puck, she always had another brother? This is revealed in a novel that will most likely not be adapted. It's said that after the battle in the city of Priestella, Natsuki Subaru approached Beatrice with a tone of urgency. The little spirit, although melting with love at feeling needed by her contractor, feigned absolute disinterest. Subaru, knowing her tsundere attitude perfectly, assured her that he couldn't do anything right now without her help. Satisfied with the flattery she received, Beatrice listened to the big revelation. Anastasia had been possessed by an artificial spirit which left her dumbfounded. The group was preparing to travel to the Pleiades watchtower in search of the legendary sage. Knowing that Anastasia was their only guide to cross the sand dunes, the situation was extremely delicate because of what this revelation implied. So Beatrice decided to observe the merchant from a distance to analyze her mana flow. She discovered a slight interference in her mana gate, which confirmed that a foreign spirit had taken control by taking advantage of a congenital deficiency in the body of the girl originally from Kararagi. The idea of interacting with another artificial spirit caused her immense internal conflict, since only 3 beings of that category existed, and all 3 were created by Echidna, Puck, herself, and that unknown being that now inhabited Anastasia. It was a kind of long-lost brother about whom her mother had never mentioned anything. Unlike the immense love she felt for Puck, Beatrice didn't perceive any familial bond toward this third spirit. Furthermore, deep down, Betty feared confirming that apathy if they got too close during the journey to the desert. While she was spying from a corner, Amelia appeared, giving her the scare of her life. The half-elf asked her what she was looking at so intently. Beatrice, trying to cover up the truth so as not to upset the innocent Amelia with the big revelation, stuttered clumsily. Amelia tenderly concluded that Beatrice was spying on Anastasia purely out of nervousness, not knowing how to approach her to strike up a friendship ahead of their long journey together. Beatrice was about to scream that she had it all wrong, but upon seeing Amelia's sweet smile, she decided to bite her tongue. She resigned herself to playing along with the young candidate, cursing under her breath for having to deal with such troublesome people. Amelia dragged Beatrice in front of Anastasia, explaining that Subaru wanted to see his little spirit making friends. Anastasia commented that they both sounded exactly like a married couple worried about their daughter's well-being, something that thrilled Amelia immensely at being considered a mother figure. While Beatrice sighed, wishing Amelia would be more considerate of her feelings, Anastasia crouched down to her eye level. With an almost imperceptible smile, the spirit inside the merchant whispered to her that she knew she had spoken with Subaru, but asked her not to distrust her so much, since at the end of the day, they shared the same origin and the same mother. Beatrice was left paralyzed by that subtle confirmation and by how cornered she felt now. Looking up at the sky with resignation, she knew perfectly well that the future awaiting them would be full of massive headaches, and it's safe to say she would remember all these interactions when she and her brother were facing critical moments inside the tower. Did you know that after Garfield opened up to his mother, he considered calling Frederica and Ryuzu to explain what he had discovered? This is revealed in a lesser-known novel that narrates the reconstruction of the water city of Priestella. In a hospital room, Kiritaka, the remaining leader of the Council of 10 of the city, was explaining to Otto that rebuilding City Hall was an absolute priority to calm the collective anxiety. Otto nodded, pointing out in passing that they were lucky the destruction occurred during good weather and not during the winter. He insisted that the city's repairs needed to be sped up before the change of seasons. Kiritaka, rubbing his forehead, agreed with him and admitted he was having a hard time finding replacements for the Council of 10. That group the people believed were killed by the cult, and when in reality, someone else was the culprit. Otto, gesturing to his own bandaged and suspended legs after having aggravated his injuries in battle, commented that having matters to attend to helped him ignore the boredom of being bedridden. As soon as Kiritaka left, not without first telling him to get some rest, Otto called out to Garfield. Much to the merchant's annoyance, the demi-beast boy nimbly slipped in through the window instead of using the door. Otto scolded him for sneaking in like a thief and eavesdropping on private conversations, to which Garfield replied, justifying himself by saying he was in charge of keeping an eye on the internal affairs officer's social life, and asked him if he was planning on joining the Council of 10. Otto sighed and said no, while reminding him of an old legend about a paranoid king who lost his throne because he distrusted his own family, implying that constant suspicion, like the kind he just showed, would ruin any organization. Garfield, with an unusually sincere look in his eyes, assured him that he didn't distrust him, but rather was genuinely worried. Then, he pressed down on one of Otto's bandages, eliciting a cry of pain from the merchant, who complained that his little brother seemed to enjoy his suffering just as much as Subaru did. After calming down, Garfield admitted his true frustration. He felt useless and bitter. Even though he was helping with the reconstruction, it seemed like an endless task, and he was mad at Otto for not resting as he was told. Otto, noticing the anguish in Garfield's heart, suggested that maybe it was time to invite Frederica and Ryuzu over for a visit. To the warrior's surprise, the merchant revealed that he had received a visit from his other family that morning, and let him know that he wanted him to resolve that issue properly. Garfield, touched by those words, confessed that he had already sent a letter asking his grandmother and sister to come see him. Otto was impressed by the boy's initiative, and they kept talking for a while. Finally, Otto sank back into the pillows. Garfield ordered him to get some sleep to recover and headed for the window. Otto scolded him one last time, demanding that he'd leave through the door if he truly wanted to change his habits. Garfield reluctantly obeyed, and before closing the door, Otto praised his great decision. The boy paused for a second, and, without looking back, waved his hand before letting his brother sink into a deep sleep. This would be one of the many chats Otto and Garfield would have while Subaru suffered through the events of Season 4. Crush has just shaken the entire world of ReZero to its core, and this will definitely stir up the anime-only fandom whenever this finally premieres in, I don't know, 10 years? Before we go any further, consider this your official spoiler warning. Volume 44 of the ReZero light novel brought 2 new chapters with it. The first is a prologue that tells us about a night from many years ago. It seems that on the very same day Rom fled the palace with Felt, Heinkel was suffering through a great deal of pain over something that befell him. Something that, in his own words, slipped through his fingers. But that's not even the most shocking part. What truly matters is the novel's bonus content. An exclusive chapter for those who purchased Volume 44 was revealed. It narrates how Subaru, Beatrice, and Tiga gather to visit one of the most important figures in the kingdom. Someone who, according to the former king of Lugunica, is the most relevant person in the entire nation. Just imagine how much the king esteemed him. He even considered Miklatov's life to be more important than his own. The most curious thing is Miklatov's connection to Princess Emeralda Lugunica, a figure who, interestingly enough, shares her name with one of the kingdom's greatest enemies, Capella Emeralda Lugunica. But what does Capella have to do with all of this? You'll find out soon enough. As soon as Subaru, Tiga, and Byako arrive at Miklatov's mansion, they find all his guards dead, and since the blood is still fresh, they deduce that it happened recently. Instantly, they rush to the old man's bedroom only to find him dead, sliced clean in half. But that wasn't what left Subaru speechless. What truly left him in shock was seeing the killer, a swordswoman who uses her weapon to cut not with the edge of steel, but with the wind. Krush Karsten. Every single one of the guards' bodies, along with Miklatov's, were cut by a blade of wind. The candidate simply looks at Subaru and asks him if he is the real Natsuki Subaru. But what exactly happened? No one knows for sure, because the extra episode ends right there. However, if we remember that Miklatov knew about Capella's connection to the kingdom's former princess, it's not far-fetched to think that now that the Archbishop has managed to overpower Crush thanks to Filore, she used her to eliminate the only person who knew too much, effectively tarnishing her rival's candidacy in the process. Remember, it is strongly believed that Capella is currently controlling the new candidate for the throne, Filore. Another possibility is that during the time Crush has been off-screen, she discovered traces of Capella and mistakenly believed the Archbishop had transformed into Miklatov. We must recall that she has already encountered the villainess and is well aware of her transformation abilities. This theory gains traction when we remember that upon seeing Subaru, she asks if he is the authentic one. Though personally, it seems to me as if Crush is suffering from a hallucination. But by far the most interesting detail is that when Crush speaks and expresses herself, she no longer sounds like the Crush we've come to know. Instead, she speaks exactly like the Crush from Season 1. Anyway, many questions and very few answers. Remember, what the hell happened in the Aganau IF? This is an alternate history of ReZero that tells us what would have happened if Subaru had made different choices. While the average fan has a general idea of what occurred, I assure you that few have stopped to think about how things turned out for everyone else. But I'm here to tell you all about it. In the original story, after Rem's death at the hands of Betelgeuse, Subaru would return to the mansion only to be killed by Puck. However, in this route, he doesn't return to the mansion. Instead, he flees elsewhere, thus avoiding his death at Puck's hands. In this way, 20 years pass in which Subaru plans his revenge against the Archbishop of Sloth. Throughout these 2 decades, he never dies. To achieve his goal, he asks Reinhard to train him in swordsmanship. In fact, it is the sword saint himself who treats his wounds after his first encounter with the Archbishop. But because Subaru is so obsessed with his vendetta, he ends up voluntarily distancing himself from Reinhard, who can only watch as his friend sinks into solitude. It is also said that, at some point, he forgot the faces of Emilia and Rem, and although he still has hallucinations of them, he is no longer able to remember what they actually looked like. When we see Subaru again after these 20 years, we notice that his appearance has changed, looking suspiciously similar to someone we already know. He is also accompanied by Patracia, a creature that, despite having belonged to the now-vanished candidate Crush, is now with him. It's also revealed that from time to time, Subaru would steal certain items to sell them to old Ram, who is still alive in the slums. Ram was already fed up with Subaru, as the boy owed him money and asked for too many favors. However, the old man still remembered how Subaru helped him in the first episode, and that kept him from hating him. Most surprisingly, Ram speaks of Felt as if she were no longer around. To pay off part of his debt, Subaru decides to loot Roswell's old abandoned mansion. On this trip, he would find Betty, who was still living there and, after a series of events, would agree to support him in his revenge. Eventually, they would meet a girl named Mimi, who didn't remember much of her past and wore tattered clothes, something very strange, as Anastasia would never allow her to be so neglected. He also recruits Felix, who was left in a catatonic state after Crush's disappearance, but who, after many years of therapy, was able to piece part of himself back together, though without being able to fill the void inside him. Subaru would take advantage of that void to recruit him, offering to reveal the reason for his suffering if he supported his mission. Since Subaru was willing to ally himself even with the devil in order to defeat Betelgeuse, he ended up including Elsa in his band of broken souls. But by far, the most interesting part is the ending. If you choose a different ally for the final battle in the game, you will unlock different epilogues. If you choose Betty, you'll see something heartbreaking. In his final seconds of life, Subaru laments abandoning the girl again. He mentions that Biko doesn't deserve to be alone for so long, and regrets not having repaired the Puck plushie that had been damaged days earlier. After his death, Subaru would return 20 years into the past. Now that he has returned to the peaceful days at the mansion, he is determined to do everything right alongside Byako and Rem. But that's a story you don't know. Did you know there's a secret from Season 3 that almost nobody caught? Well, saying nobody is a bit arrogant, but at least I haven't seen many people outside my circle talking about it. And by the way, spoiler warning, many of you know the gluttony siblings in ReZero? Those bastards who can erase your existence and your memories with just one touch. But what not everyone knows is that each of them represents a different aspect of hunger. Lei Batankaitos is a picky eater, so it's not unusual that he only devours certain people or only steals a part of them, whether it's their memories or their existence. On the other hand, his brother Roy Alfard is completely different. He represents the most unrestrained side of gluttony. When he finds someone, he devours them completely, absorbing both their name and their memories. So, if we assume that one brother wipes you off the map while the other might spare your life, why the hell did Julius Jukulius come back alive and with his memories intact after his encounter with Roy? Let's remember that due to how selective Lei is, he only ended up devouring a part of Crush and, at the time, Emilia. In hindsight, it's very strange that Roy only went halfway with Julius. The most curious part is that when a fan noticed this peculiarity and asked Tappei Nagatsuki about it, the author only replied that the reason was a spoiler. But since I don't want you to leave without an answer, I'll give you a couple of theories I have about this phenomenon. The first explanation is that, possibly, Roy couldn't completely devour his target due to the intense emotions he received from Joshua. Let's remember that the power of gluttony is a double-edged sword. By consuming a person's life, you also acquire their tastes and attachments. It's logical to think that the feelings of Julius's younger brother influenced Roy, stopping him from completely finishing off his own brother. The other explanation, although much less convincing to me, is that the reason certain victims don't lose everything is due to their divine protection. For example, both Crush and Julius have a protection, and curiously, both kept a part of their being. Could it be that these protections act as a last resort lifeline against the archbishops? Honestly, I don't think so, since later on we see that Emilia, even without having a divine protection, isn't completely devoured either. Furthermore, this theory falls apart when we remember that authorities will always rank above any divine protection on the power scale. Many questions and few answers, but tell me, what do you think might have happened? Let me know in the comments. Did you know there's a death for Subaru so gruesome that if it were canon, it would surely rank among the worst the protagonist has ever endured? If I had to describe it in words, it's comparable to Spider-Man's death in the Marvel Zombies universe. I'm not showing the reference image due to YouTube's policies, but if you're not familiar with it, don't worry. I'll explain everything in detail. While Subaru canonically says his worst death was when he was devoured by my brothers, This non-canon death I'm about to tell you could easily compete for the top spot. A few years ago, The Prophecy of the Throne was released, a game that tells an alternate story of the first season, one where an extra candidate appears to participate in the royal selection. Through the game's events, we learn that this girl is participating against her will and under the orders of an archbishop, who assigns one of their employees the task of watching her and ensuring she follows orders. After Subaru manages to thwart his enemy's plans and expose this group, the villain of the hour, Sakura Element, manages to kidnap him and take him to her lair, a place filled with wasps that suck the mana out of their victims until they die. To Subaru's horror, he saw how they had already finished off one of his friends, Tiga. His companion's corpse was in a corner, buried under a mound of wasps. Melty, the threatened candidate, was also being drained, and if they weren't stopped soon, she would likely die. But there was nothing Subaru could do, as he was gagged and bound. Sakura complains to him about how he ruined her plans and confesses she's amazed by how strangely competent he is for someone who looks like an idiot. After a brief reference to the mastermind behind all this, she decides to end the troublesome boy's life. But seeing that Subaru showed a lot of resistance and still had the determination to fight, she decided to give him a different kind of death. Instantly, she orders her magic wasps to enter through Subaru's mouth and head for his stomach. She made sure to do it slowly so that the feeling of revulsion would last forever. And when not a single wasp more could fit inside the boy, Sakura ordered even more creatures to enter, while demanding that the ones already inside move as much as possible. There came a moment when Subaru's body simply couldn't take it anymore, and his insides exploded. While this was happening, Subaru remembers hearing someone calling his name. It was Melty, who was in a corner under a mound of wasps. He didn't know if she was calling for him to rescue her or because she was worried about him. It's something he will never know. But now that he has returned from death thanks to his power, he already knows Sakura's true identity and how he must deal with her. But that's a story you don't know yet. What do the light novels say about Subaru's parents? It's something I wanted to know when I started reading the ZzZero novels. After all, after watching the episode about the protagonist's past, it's hard not to get attached to them. Surprisingly, the novels do give us a bit more info about them, but it's not like they say anything huge, really. In one novel, Subaru remembers how it was a tradition in the Natsuki household for holiday decorations to not be taken down until much later. Subaru recalls that they once celebrated Christmas with decorative Halloween pumpkins. It's said that their neighbors looked at them weirdly because of this. But given how cool Kenichi was, everyone kind of just got used to the peculiar sight. It's also said that Subaru once tried to smoke because he thought it would make him popular, only for his mother to scold him in tears. This made his father angry, and in Subaru's own words, he gave him a beating. I think the funniest part of this last anecdote is that he remembered it while telling Biko why little girls like her shouldn't smoke. I think the arc where Subaru remembers his father the most, or at least on the same level as in the second season, is in the arc that nobody read, the Empire arc. When suspicions started to arise that the father of the child Subaru was someone awesome, Subaru began to remember his father, Kenichi, more frequently. He remembered how, even though he knew he was an office worker, he never knew exactly what he did for a living. And although the novel doesn't say it, it seems like Subaru regrets not having taken the time to look into that irrelevant detail. The same thing happens in Season 4. There comes a moment where he regrets not having washed the dishes he ate from, leaving his mother to wash them the day he was teleported. After this, there are no more anecdotes told about them in the novel, but there are anecdotes about them given by the author. For example, when Teppei was taking ideas for short stories suggested by fans, someone suggested he write a story where Kenichi and Naoko temporarily visited Lugunica, but after returning to their home world, they would brush the event off as just a dream. The author said it was an interesting idea and that he would write it down. Unfortunately, it's been like 10 years, and it looks like GTA 6 is going to come out before that does. Another curious anecdote from the author that I loved was when a fan asked him what Subaru's life would have been like if he had never been teleported. The author simply said that Subaru's life would continue normally, with him skipping classes until, on the day he was supposed to graduate, his father would give him a serious scolding. But aside from the punishment, he would also make sure to be there for him to support his rehabilitation process. So Subaru would graduate a bit late, but he would get into college where, unfortunately, he would remain a loner. But once he graduates and starts working, it's a given that he would fall in love with one of the rookies at his job, someone with a heart similar to Rem's, a girl who would surely find his clumsy side cute, and with whom he would end up starting a family until the end of his days. And all of this would happen just because of the scolding Kenichi would eventually give his son. Personally, I would like Subaru to see his parents again, even if it means leaving Lugunica behind. Besides, Subaru himself says that when he arrived in this world, something inside him told him that he was never going to be able to return to his original world.